Did you know there's life almost a kilometer deep in Antarctica? And what about the wells that make scary hell noises? Or the epicenter of a radiation accident? These and other places are really scary, and people wouldn't go there. But thanks to the cameras, we can see and hear what's going on there. This is Infinity, and in this episode, I'll show you 11 moments when cameras and microphones have been dropped and lowered into creepy places. Antarctica Mine. Antarctica is one of the most mysterious places in the world. It holds many secrets, not only on the surface, but also inside. Literally. Last February, scientists decided to explore the subglacial cavities of Antarctica and drilled a 900-meter-thick hole in the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf. They lowered a camera to the bottom of the scary hole. Scientists were looking for signs of pollution on the seafloor, but came across something unexpected: more than 30 creatures unknown to science. It was sudden in general, plus scientists have not yet understood how these creatures managed to live at such a depth without light and oxygen. This is the first time in history that such creatures have been found so deep beneath the Antarctic ice shelf. The discovery brought more questions than answers. It's unclear how and when the creatures got under the ice shelf, how long they've been there, and how many there are. From cold Antarctica, we're transported to the hot Devil's Cauldron. No, this isn't one of the locations of hell, but just a deep hole located in the American state of Nevada. It contains a geothermal spring filled with very hot water at about 93 degrees Celsius. The depth of the breach reaches 15 meters, and for 9 meters it's filled with almost boiling water. In general, this place is similar with the real cauldrons of hell, not only by the horrible temperature, but also by the screams. Several years ago, a YouTuber decided to conduct an experiment and test his iPhone for durability. The Devil's Cauldron was chosen as the test site. The guy tied his iPhone to a drone on a long fishing line, fixated it, turned on the recording, and threw the phone into the water. During the first dive, no strange sounds were recorded. The second time, the blogger threw the phone from a greater height. After diving into the water, the gadget suddenly began to record eerie screams, which strongly resembled human screams. In the screams, the blogger even heard something in English. It seemed to him that these cries were crying out for help. The recording lasted a few dozen seconds and was interpreted after that. What could it be? Nanaimo. If we go even further north, we end up in Canada. There, on Vancouver Island, is the city of Nanaimo. It's known for being the second most populous city on the island, and for its creepy abyss. In fact, it's a fault in the soil. At some angles, the abyss seems not so big or deep, but in fact, it's 70 centimeters wide. The depth of the abyss isn't known, but in some places it reaches a kilometer. Locals say that people have often fallen into the abyss and no one could help them. They remain somewhere at the bottom. A blogger decided to see what else could be lurking at the bottom of this terrible place. He fixated a GoPro attached to a very long rope and began lowering the camera down. It was difficult to reach the bottom because of the nature of the fault, but after 4 hours of trying, the blogger lowered the camera to a depth of 500 meters. There, he didn't find anything supernatural, but the images themselves are still scary. It's creepy to imagine how deep the faults can be and that someone could fall into them. It's even possible to fall into an ordinary well. Even if a person falls into a well, which is several meters deep, it would be extremely difficult for them to get out on their own. But what about a well that's several dozen meters deep? A man named Michael wanted to find out what could be found at that depth, so he went to one of nature's deepest wells. He didn't get to the bottom himself, but lowered his camera down there. After a long descent, the camera finally reaches the water. We see that it's not shallow at all. The camera keeps sinking deeper and deeper into the terrifying abyss. The water's clear enough. There are rocks and sticks sticking out to prop them up. Finally, we see the local fauna. The water inhabitants are transparent and blind because the light from the sun doesn't come to such a depth. Various monsters are not found here, but it doesn't matter. Even the plunge into such a deep well is frightening. And it's much scarier to think about the possibility of a human accidentally falling down there. Now let's take a look at an oil well. You've all seen oil rigs. They look epic. But have you ever wondered what exactly the oil well looks like? The one through which oil comes to the surface? It looks something like this. Fortunately, with the advancement of technology, we can now see with our own eyes what happens at such depths. Scientists have lowered a camera into a deep well at a depth of several kilometers. The camera sequentially shows the structure of the entire oil well, passing through the well head, the borehole, and the bottom hole. As the camera descends lower, alternating inflows of fluid and water appear in the frame. It has to be said that this kind of footage is a real rarity. At great depths, the temperatures are so high, not every camera can withstand them. In the future, scientists plan to conduct the same experiment with an even deeper and more frightening place, the Kola Super Deep Well. This is the deepest borehole in the world, which is more than 12 kilometers deep. It'll be interesting to see what's down there. By the way, when the Kola Super Deep Well was still being developed, scientists also lowered various instruments into it. Rumor has it that they once managed to record scary sounds from under the ground, which were heard directly from the Kola Super Deep Well. If you listen to them, it seems to be roughly what hell sounds like. We've already seen from the Devil's Cauldron that sometimes spooky sounds come from the depths. These guys managed to record something creepy too. In 2013, they lowered a camera with a flashlight, a pencil, and a depth gauge strapped to it into a deep well. The creepy place presses from all angles. Frames of the narrow well can cause a claustrophobic attack. It's also worth paying attention to the sound. At such a great depth, there is none at all. Only occasional silence is interrupted by the camera hitting the walls. Even such a video sequence is quite creepy, but as the guys said, at certain depths they recorded screams similar to those that were heard in the Kola Super Deep Well. And what if we go even lower? When it comes to natural depths, there is nothing deeper than the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest point on Earth, going about 11 kilometers down from sea level. What happens in this place? A few years ago, oceanographers have lowered hydrophone to a depth of 10.9 kilometers. Most of the group was confident that the equipment is needed only for formality because the Mariana Trench was considered a completely quiet place. The scientists kept thinking so for about 3 weeks. But 23 days after the descent, the hydrophone came to life. It began to transmit dozens of different sounds to the surface. Some were vibrations from passing ships, some recorded earthquakes, and some were the singing of whales or unknown sea giants. There were other strange sounds too. Researchers have suggested that the Mariana Trench simply captures and somehow accumulates sound waves from different parts of the planet. This hypothesis looks contrived, but according to scientists, it's almost impossible to explain such sounds otherwise. You probably all know about the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which occurred due to an earthquake in Japan in 2011. It was a radiation accident, which was on par with the Chernobyl disaster in scale. Already after the accident, scientists lowered a robot with a camera into the closed reactor to take a look at what happened. The robot got stuck and was unable to return, but it was able to transmit data from the eerie place to the surface. Even though the robot was designed specifically to withstand powerful radiation, there was still interference and noises on the screen. The robot filmed the room, debris on the floor, and showed that there was constant steam coming from below. Even despite the design of the robot, it's surprising that it wasn't destroyed in a matter of minutes, because the radiation level in the epicenter was simply monstrous. Let's get back to the seas for a while. This time we're in Norway, on Lake Hornindalsvatnet. This is the deepest lake, not only in Norway, but also in all of Europe. Its depth is 514 meters, and that's how deep this fisherman lowered his camera to make his long-held dream come true. The camera with the flashlight descended along a cable to the very bottom of the lake for a long time and finally reached it. At one point, all we could see was the light from the flashlight. Even though it was a clear day, the sunlight had no way to penetrate to this depth. At the very bottom of the lake, we see a rather eerie picture: darkness, sand, and not the nicest of local inhabitants. Basically, all the creatures living at the bottom of the lake are transparent or pale. At the end of the video, the flashlight can't take the pressure and turns off, and we can barely see what the situation at the great depths really looks like. Let's look at the underwater world some more. A few years ago, scientists decided to explore the underwater fauna around Puerto Rico. They put a camera into the deepest underwater pit of the Atlantic Ocean, which is over 8,600 meters deep. In the great depths, they found a variety of creatures, including some frightening. For example, the camera lens got a giant squid, one of the creepiest sea creatures, which can reach 20 meters in length. It's believed that this monster was the prototype of the legendary kraken. Also in the water depths, scientists have found jellyfish, unusual octopuses, and even some creatures about which they had not the slightest idea. It's difficult to imagine how many more unknown animals and even monsters are lurking in the depths. And finally, let's take a look at what unusual objects can be found on Mars, because this place can also be called creepy. After all, it's the most remote place where human-controlled rovers are regularly present. Last year, the rover's camera captured mysterious objects on the surface of the red planet. The rover captured something that looked like machines of some kind. Either the Martian rocks were wind-blasted to such a condition that their streamlined shape became reminiscent of some vehicles, or it's something unexplainable. But judging by their appearance, the objects appear to be made out of metal and of man-made origin. Users of social networks share their hypotheses about these objects. Some believe that they're alien ships, while others believe that it's a secret mission to Mars that left the Mars rovers or other technical means on the planet. That's all, guys. What do you think the rover captured? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.